The Greeks spent 10 years trying to capture the city of Troy. They had legendary warriors, powerful kings, and one of the largest armies the ancient world had ever seen. But no matter how many times they attacked, they couldn't get through Troy's massive walls. After a decade of fighting, both sides were exhausted. The Greeks couldn't win, and the Trojans couldn't force them to leave. Then one Greek commander came up with an idea that sounded completely ridiculous. Instead of attacking the city one more time, he suggested giving the Trojans a giant wooden horse. That strange idea ended a war that had lasted 10 years. The war started because of Prince Paris of Troy and Helen, the wife of the Spartan king Menelaus. Paris had visited Sparta as a guest, and in ancient Greece, guests were expected to be treated with respect and protected. But instead of honouring that trust, Paris left with Helen. Whether she went willingly or not depends on which version of the story you believe, but to the Greeks it was an unforgivable insult. Menelaus demanded that Helen be returned. Troy refused. So the Greek kings joined forces and sailed across the sea with thousands of soldiers, expecting a quick victory. Instead, the war dragged on for 10 years. By the end of it, both armies had lost countless friends, brothers, and fathers, and neither side was any closer to winning.
The man who finally changed everything wasn't the strongest fighter. It was Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, who was known more for his intelligence than his sword. He gathered the Greek leaders and proposed something no one expected. Instead of trying to break into Troy, they would convince the Trojans to invite them inside. His plan was simple, at least on paper. Build a huge wooden horse, hide a group of soldiers inside it, burn the Greek camp, and sail away just far enough to make it look like the army had given up. The horse would be left behind as a gift. If the Trojans believed the war was over, they might bring it into the city themselves. It sounded risky, but after 10 years of failure, the Greeks were willing to try almost anything.
The next morning, the Trojans looked outside their walls and couldn't believe what they saw. The Greek camp was empty. Their ships appeared to be gone. The only thing left behind was a giant wooden horse. Many people believed the Greeks had finally admitted defeat. The city erupted in celebration. People laughed, hugged each other, and thanked the gods that the long war was finally over. But one man wasn't convinced. A Trojan priest named Laocoon warned everyone not to trust the horse. He famously said, "Beware of Greeks bearing gifts." For a moment, some people hesitated, but no one knew that an even stranger event was about to change their minds.
According to the legend, 2 giant sea serpents suddenly appeared from the sea. They attacked Laocoon and his 2 sons, killing all 3. The Trojans believed it was a sign from the gods. To them, Laocoon had been punished for doubting the horse. Another warning came from Princess Cassandra. She had the gift of seeing the future and begged everyone not to bring the horse into Troy. But Cassandra carried a terrible curse. She always told the truth, yet no one ever believed her. Ignoring both warnings, the Trojans pulled the enormous horse through their gates and celebrated what they thought was the end of the war. That night, the city celebrated. After 10 years of fighting, people finally felt safe enough to sleep. Hidden inside the wooden horse, Greek soldiers waited quietly. When the streets became silent, they climbed out through a hidden door. They eliminated the guards and opened the city gates. The Greek fleet, which had only pretended to leave, returned under the cover of darkness. Thousands of soldiers rushed into Troy. The city was completely unprepared. By morning, Troy was burning. King Priam was dead. The temples and palaces had been destroyed, and the city that had stood for generations had fallen in a single night. Not because its walls were too weak, but because its people believed the wrong gift.
Whether every part of the Trojan horse story really happened is still debated by historians. Some believe it's a myth, others think it may have been inspired by a real event. But one thing is certain: the Trojan horse became one of the most famous symbols of deception in history. For 10 years, the Greeks couldn't defeat Troy with weapons. In the end, they won with patience, clever planning, and one unforgettable trick. That's why, even today, when someone talks about a Trojan horse, they're describing something that looks harmless on the outside but hides something dangerous within.